After 8 years of marriage, Stella was done. She had a young, handsome secretary by her side. The secretary didn't care about her luxury cars or villas. He just wanted her to go to night markets and strolls with him. It was innocent fun. Stella seemed to have a thing for him. And all I did was mention the secretary once. She warned me as if I was the enemy. "I'm clean with Oliver. Don't use your tricks to mess with him." At that moment, I knew our marriage was over. Daddy, the mermaid princess, and the prince beat the bad guy and got married. Then what? Before bed, my daughter asked, looking annoyed that her fairy tale just ended. Why do stories always stop at the wedding with no after? Holding her book, I paused a bit. Maybe it's because the stories after marriage aren't always happy. Even passionate love can fade with constant arguments. But I wanted to give my daughter her happy ending. I closed the book and gently tapped her nose. After that, they had a baby and lived happily ever after. Her face lit up with joy, clapping. Just like Mommy and Daddy, with Wendy, we're always happy. It's bedtime, sweetie. Good night. I kissed her forehead and left her room. The house was dark and cold. Not a single light on. I texted Stella. "It's the 10th, public service day. Come home." No surprise, no reply. I shrugged it off and headed to bed. After my shower, Stella was back, leaning against the bed watching me with a cold smile. Ever since I brought up her secretary at dinner, Stella's been giving me the cold shoulder. She moved into a hotel to make a point, maybe to threaten too. So Tom losing trust in me? Pushing me to come home? She mocked my distrust, her smile sharp and bitter. I didn't respond, just walked toward her. Her eyes got colder, like she was trying to prove her innocence out of spite. It reminded me of our first time. It was on our wedding day. Stella cherished every first in our relationship, even after marriage. That day, I tried to keep her relaxed, asking her at every step, respecting her. She was sweating nervously, and when she said it hurt, I stopped, even apologized awkwardly. The gentle, shy girl was now replaced by a stern face. I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of sadness. There was a time when Stella loved me deeply. She was gone the next morning. Her side of the bed was cold and empty. I got up. The nanny told me Stella took our daughter to preschool. Stella's been traveling for work, but this morning she headed straight to Wendy's room. Wendy was thrilled to see her, begged for dumplings near the school. Stella only said she'd be out with her. Finally, a moment of relief. Stella adored Wendy, and we both hid our marital problems from her. During breakfast, my phone dinged repeatedly. A friend's text came with a photo. Stella cheating? My heart sank as I clicked it. Stella with the secretary Oliver at night markets. Even in low light, Oliver's smile was bright. He was helping Stella with heart-shaped earrings like a couple. So this is how she spent those days. Another text from my friend blew up my phone. Gossips spreading. Though Stella's face wasn't clear in the shots, her name was buzzing. Did Stella lose her mind? She once loved you like crazy, fought her family to marry you. Now she's fooling around? Women are all the same. My friend's anger hit a memory. Back then, our love was pure and every obstacle was worth it. Stella, a family heiress, chose me, an orphan, over family matchmaking, causing a rift. We struggled to prove ourselves. Those early days were tough. I crafted plans nonstop, got sick from the stress. Stella lost her status, bending for deals, often humiliated yet smiling through it. I once saw her scolded, red-faced, but still helping a drunk into a car. I almost gave up, told her to quit. But Stella clung tight, her voice fearless. "I won't give up, Tom. I'll never leave you." Eventually, we made it. The business grew and her family finally accepted us. During wedding planning, Stella was ecstatic, pulling me across town, sleepless with joy. She was finally marrying me. No one doubted her sincerity back then. But the truth is, feelings change. 8 years in, she grew tired. This scandal could hit the company. So I got on damage control fast. I even spoke out, faking an alibi. Stella's with me and our daughter. Ignore rumors. I tried hard to salvage her reputation, avoid stock hits. But that so-called innocent secretary went public. It's me and Stella. I broke her earrings, owed her a pair. His post stirred up more doubts. Who hasn't heard about Stella and Tom? From school days to wedding bells? A couple deeply in love. Are you trying to get in on this buzz too? You going to replace her earrings? Who are you kidding? Thinking Stella would be interested in cheap earrings from a street vendor. Keep dreaming. To my surprise, Stella seemed to want to set the record straight for him and confirmed it in his comments. Suddenly, everyone online was buzzing. It made my company, my statement, look ridiculous. Back in the day, I did whatever it took to get the company going and ticked off quite a few people. Competitors are everywhere, and they jumped at the chance to step on me. Before long, I was in the hot seat. It seemed like Stella just caught wind of my PR moves when she called, sounding reproachful. Tom, what the heck are you doing? I was just hanging out with Oliver without any hidden stuff. Your actions only make folks think we're hiding something. Now the company's image is taking a hit because of this mess. Seems like people were giving Oliver a hard time, and Stella was sticking up for the guy. My tone turned icy. Then why didn't you just frankly tell everyone you were on a date? Stella went silent for a second, then snapped, Tom, you're impossible. He broke my earring, he's just replacing it. It's straightforward, nothing more. Why are you so suspicious? Forget it, I don't want to argue. Just stay out of this mess. I'll handle it myself. She hung up right after that. But before the call ended, I heard a guy on the other end complain quietly. Why's Tom lying to everyone? He's just complicating things for you and the company. This whole thing's blowing up because of him, and you're the one having to deal with it. Never mind him, he's a nut job. Stella's voice had a coldness and aversion I'd never heard before. I stayed in the same position, holding the phone, with my fingers growing stiff and cold. I wondered if I should really think seriously about whether this marriage should continue. I'm an orphan, raised in a welfare home. Orphans always long for a family. I truly believed back then that Stella and I would make a happy and cozy home together. But reality isn't a fairy tale, where you can pause at the most loving moment forever. Since getting married, we argue over silly things and disagree about trivial stuff. These constant tiffs have built up over the years, turning into exhaustion and hostility. Rationally, I know if the love's gone, clinging on will just bring pain. But then I think of my daughter. She's only 5, an age so pure and bright. I want her to have a whole and healthy childhood. Maybe it's because I can't bear to see this family fall apart. Or maybe it's because I can't stand for the love to end like this. In the end, I decided to have a heart-to-heart with Stella. I want to give this family, and us, one last chance. 3 days later, it's our wedding anniversary. I messaged Stella to remind her to come home that day. Maybe there's still some love left in her heart. She took a long time to respond, but eventually sent back a simple okay. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders and couldn't help but feel a bit hopeful and expectant. But when the day came, after tucking my daughter into bed, I set the table with wine and food, reheating it again and again. Yet she didn't show. Her phone was off and she didn't return my messages. Instead, I received a video on my phone featuring her. It was her at a bar, chatting and drinking with friends. Stella, isn't today your wedding anniversary? Why are you out with us? Yeah, aren't you usually cozying up with Tom today? Not sharing any love this year? Seeing the same face year after year gets old. The atmosphere got weirdly tense. Her friends fell silent in shock. Only Stella still swirled her glass, speaking in a detached voice. If I'd known Tom would turn into such a bore after marriage, I would have never gotten hitched. With a thud, the phone slipped from my hand. I sat there, dazed before finally bending down to pick it up. Even though the phone was right there, I just couldn't seem to get a clear fix on its direction. Shrouded in a fog, like how things are between Stella and me, realizing there's no way back. Stella came home the next morning, lounging on the couch like nothing happened. She didn't say a word about last night, and I stayed silent, not asking. Maybe because the silence was too much, she glanced at me oddly. The heat from the search topic had died down. After a while, she spoke up, maybe trying to make me think she was busy dealing with the backlash last night. I pressed my lips together, still not saying a thing. She frowned, seemed a bit agitated. But our daughter came down, so she masked it. "Mommy," Wendy chirped, bouncing into Stella's arms. Stella embraced her warmly. "Today, Mommy's taking you to the amusement park. Okay?" Wendy was all excited about the amusement park, then looked at me with those big eyes. Stella frowned. "Tom, Wendy deserves a happy and healthy childhood. Stop being so controlling." Seeing Wendy's hopeful eyes, my heart softened. "Okay, but only for half a day, all right? She has art class in the afternoon." "Oh yay, awesome. Thank you, Daddy." Wendy clapped her hands excitedly. She wanted me to come too, but I had something I couldn't reschedule that afternoon. Wendy seemed a bit disappointed, with an adorable maturity. "Okay, but make sure work doesn't tire you out, Daddy." I chuckled, kissing her cheek, and waved her off with a smile. Stella had taken Wendy out to play before. As a mom, she really is competent. That's why I trust her to look after our daughter. It wasn't until the afternoon when the teacher called that I realized Wendy hadn't been sent to school. I frowned and dialed Stella. Took a while before she picked up. Her breathing was heavy. "Tom." Wendy said she had an allergic reaction and was throwing up and having diarrhea. "She's in the hospital now." I rushed to the hospital in a panic. Little did I know Oliver was there too. I glanced at him but was more worried about seeing my daughter in the hospital room. Stella called out nervously, "Tom, calm down. Wendy is out of danger and is just sleeping inside." I felt like I was on the edge of losing it. That's probably why Stella was so anxious to calm me down. But before she could finish, Oliver weakly interrupted through tears. "I'm sorry, Tom. I bought Wendy a cake. She just had a few bites and said she felt horrible." Panicked. He spoke like that, but there was a look of defiance in his eyes. I raised my hand and slapped him hard. Oliver didn't expect it, and his face turned red and swollen right away. He gritted his teeth but didn't retaliate, just looked more pitiful as he wiped his tears. Stella immediately got in front of him. "Tom, Oliver didn't do it on purpose. Don't take your anger out on him. And you? Are you deaf?" I was losing my mind. "Don't you know she's allergic to cream?" She closed her eyes and didn't flinch. Oliver, meanwhile, yelped like he'd been hit. "Tom, don't blame Stella. It's all my fault. Wendy wanted some cake, and Stella did warn her about the allergy. It was my idea that a little taste wouldn't hurt. Besides, back home, some people have allergies too. Adults say if you feed them little by little, they overcome it. I thought I could help Wendy get over it. I didn't know she'd react so badly." I looked at the silent Stella, stunned. Turns out that's their reasoning? Great. Wendy's allergy is severe. When she was little, she was hospitalized due to eating cake by mistake. Stella and I turned pale in the hospital back then. We were strict about her diet since then to prevent it from happening again. But now, she actually trusted Wendy to try Oliver's absurd theory. She's her daughter. For crying out loud. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, feeling endless sadness and disappointment. "Tom, don't be like this." Stella started speaking. I just thought after so long, maybe Wendy's symptoms had lessened. Either way, Wendy's fine now, it was just a scare. "Stella, let's divorce." I interrupted her. Her voice suddenly froze. Stella almost instinctively started to walk towards me, eyes filled with panic. But I walked right past her into the room, shutting her out. She tried to open the door, worried about waking Wendy, calling quietly, "Tom, it was just an accident. I swear it won't happen again. Tom, can we talk?" How funny. She's the one who got bored and regretted the marriage. And now, when I agree to end it, she's panicked. I've decided on a divorce and immediately contacted a lawyer to best handle it for my interests. What surprised me was Stella's willingness to compromise. "Tom, do we really have to go this far?" She came to the hospital daily. I refused to let her see Wendy, so she'd sit outside on a chair, looking quite defeated. "I get it, you care about Oliver. Can we stop fighting? I've let him go and vow never to see him again. I swear I never crossed any lines with him. Tom, can we not get divorced?" She wiped her face, letting her pride go. We had been together for years and knew each other well. Like Stella, who knew my stubbornness once I made up my mind. But it seems she doesn't quite understand me. Stella, you still don't get why I want a divorce. Care about Wendy. Maybe in the past Stella was my first choice. But my daughter is my one true family in this world. For Wendy, I could look past Stella's emotional betrayal for a complete family. I can also give up on Stella for the same reason. She fell silent, obviously realizing it. But Tom, I am Wendy's mom. I love her just as much as you do. You can't judge me over one careless mistake. Seeing she couldn't sway me, Stella bit her lip, staring directly at me resolutely. Plus, are you sure you can win custody over me? Stella indeed hadn't done anything concretely wrong. This divorce wouldn't be easy. But even so, I believe things can be done if you find a way. Eventually, Stella found a way into the hospital room. When I was at the law office, a nurse called apologetic. Tom, I just went to the restroom, and when I came back, Stella was in Wendy's room. Now Wendy's crying to be with her, and there's nothing I can do. When I rushed back, Stella had just put Wendy to sleep. The kid was in the hospital for a few days and wasn't in great spirits. But now, there was a satisfied smile on her sleeping face. Seemed like she had fun with Stella. Stella looked at me, speaking softly. Tom, I'm Wendy's mother. You can stop me now, but not forever. Besides, you saw Wendy's happier with me around. I can't deny what Stella is saying, but it's like getting punched in the chest. It's painful and it leaves me trembling. Tom, I still stand by what I said, no divorce. Our family can still be whole. But if you insist on this drama, I won't give up Wendy's custody. Wendy is out of the hospital. I didn't take her back to our old place. I made up an excuse and brought her to a new home. Maybe the allergy scare made her feel unsafe. She's refusing to go to school. But she's still doing the homework her teacher assigned last week. When I brought water to her room, she was nibbling on her pencil, working on a drawing. On the blank paper, she sketched 3 little cartoonish figures, a family of 3 holding hands. When I walked in, she excitedly showed me the drawing. Dad, look, this is you, this is Mom, and that's me. Did I do a good job? Her eyes were bright with expectation, looking for praise. I couldn't bear to shatter her vision of happiness. But she needed to face reality. Wendy. I knelt down to her level, softened my voice. Wendy, if one day Dad and Mom aren't together, who would you want to be with? This was a worst-case scenario. If I were to lose to Stella, Wendy's choice would be crucial. Nervously, I awaited her response as she blinked up at me, confused. Why would Dad and Mom separate? Don't families stay together forever in fairy tales? I gently touched her face. Life isn't a fairy tale. Dad and Mom have grown apart and can't stay together. I'm sorry you have to deal with this, but Wendy, be brave. She seemed to understand, and tears welled up in her eyes as she looked down, jabbing her pencil at her drawing. Just as I was about to comfort her, she spoke again, quietly. Then I want to be with Dad. The words caught in my throat. Are you mad at me? She asked timidly, clutching her shirt anxiously. Looking into her eyes, my heart broke. Before tears could fall, I pulled her into a tight embrace. Can you tell Dad why? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Wendy mumbled, no reason, as if scared to say more. Closing my eyes, my chest tightened with sorrow. After that day, Wendy seemed scared to face me. Yet, to my surprise, she secretly went to find Stella. Stella sounded smug when she got my call. Tom, does hiding Wendy make a difference? Her heart is with me, isn't it? She taunted, oblivious to my breakdown. Wendy can't live without me, so are you sure you want a divorce? I'll give you time to think. Once you've decided, I'll let you know where we are. Stella hung up, and my heart sank with emptiness and confusion. I had no idea what to do next. The lawyer asked if I wanted to go through with the custody battle. I didn't know, as I sat alone on the balcony all night. Later, the lawyer suggested I see a therapist, worried I was breaking down. Tom, sometimes letting go is a gain. Letting go. What was I holding on to? Once it was Stella as we worked hard for our little family. Then it was fighting for Wendy's custody. But she doesn't need me, so what am I even fighting for? Lost in thought, I couldn't sleep, relying on meds each night. A mental wreck, Stella continued sending me clips of Wendy. In every video and photo, she was smiling, so radiant. Stella said, "Tom, can't we just be a family like before?" For a moment, I almost gave in. Then one day, I replied to Stella. "I need you," I said, "to sign a new agreement. I want one that benefits me without any downside." "Mom, I miss Dad." Wendy's voice suddenly snapped Stella from her thoughts, as Wendy nestled in her arms, knocking her phone aside. Stella instinctively held her close and said, "Don't worry. Dad will be back soon." Wendy's eyes lit up. "Really? Really? When has Mom lied to you? Now it's time to sleep. Okay?" Stella replied, though her eyes were still on her phone, distracted. Sensing this, Wendy persisted, "Mom, are you going out?" "I want to go." "No, it's late. If Dad knew you weren't sleeping, he'd be upset." "Oh, all right." Wendy, ever obedient to Tom, let go of the topic and shuffled back to bed. Watching her daughter drift to sleep, Stella returned her focus to her phone, her expression complicated. The message was from Oliver. "Stella, I can't control my feelings for you, but I don't want to be a homewrecker. Let's end this tonight. Remember that river? When we stumbled back after a party, you let me walk you under the stars, afraid I might stumble. You might have forgotten, but that night felt like our first date to me. What do I do, Stella? I really, really like you. I don't know what to do. Let's end this tonight." In the place that felt the happiest and most romantic to me. The attached picture was of him standing by the river, looking dejected and desperate. Stella hadn't cheated, but she couldn't deny there was a moment she was drawn to Oliver, though she knew it was just a fleeting feeling. Realizing Oliver might be serious about ending things, her breath hitched, and she found herself dialing his number. On the other end, Oliver answered immediately, his voice filled with relief and tears. "Stella, I never thought I'd hear your voice before I died. Thank you for giving me no regrets." Stella gritted her teeth. "Don't jump. Wait for me." She rushed out the door. She didn't notice the little kid pretending to sleep in bed, sneaking a peek. This night became the one Stella regretted the most. She found Oliver and forced him, still teetering by the river, back into the car. She drove, frazzled. "I'll take you home, and we'll pretend tonight never happened." Oliver, with tears glistening on his lashes, looked at her with a mix of surprise and happiness. "Stella, you really care about me, don't you? I knew it. Deep down, you really do care. I want nothing else. Please don't push me away. I just want to stay by your side and see you every day." "Oliver." Stella gripped the steering wheel tightly. "I will not betray my husband." She warned him under her breath, yet her foot pressed harder on the gas, like she was trying to escape. Oliver looked at her for a long moment before letting out a bitter laugh. "Then why did you come to save me? Wouldn't it be better if I just died?" As he finished speaking, he reached to open the door and jump out. Stella was startled and quickly reached to stop him. But she forgot the door had locked automatically, and in her panic, the steering wheel veered off course, crashing hard into the guardrail. The car flipped, unleashing a deafening crash in the silent night. The airbag shielded most of Stella, but her face was still cut by shards, skin torn, covered in blood. She was ringing in her ears, unable to hear anything, feeling like the world was spinning. The engine was already smoking. She pounded on herself to regain clarity, pulling at the unconscious Oliver beside her. "Oliver, wake up!" Being tugged at his wounds, Oliver opened his eyes in pain. Realizing what had happened, his face turned ghostly pale. He clutched tightly onto Stella, screaming for help. Stella, though barely strong, used what she had left to drag him out. "Get out now." They barely escaped before the car exploded violently behind them, bursting into raging flames. Stella thought she heard Wendy's voice pierce through her ringing ears. She looked up suddenly, disbelief all over, and frantically asked Oliver, "Did you hear Wendy's voice? Was Wendy calling for help?" Oliver was shaking. "Stella, you misheard. It was me shouting for help all along. Let's go, it really hurts." A passerby had called for an ambulance in time, and medics were already there. Looking at the battered Oliver, Stella finally nodded. Right, Wendy's asleep in the hotel. There's no way she'd be here. Relieved she didn't bring Wendy that night, or the little one would have been scared out of her wits. The car in front roared with crimson flames, smoke suffusing like a suffocating hell. Stella helped Oliver onto the stretcher. Let's go. I learned from the news about Stella's car accident and explosion. My heart sank. I called Stella. Luckily, she answered. What about Wendy? Stella hesitated briefly, sighing a bit desolately. Tom, don't you care about me at all now? I raised my voice. Where's Wendy? Okay. Calm down, Wendy's fine. She wasn't with me. She should still be asleep in the hotel. She's in room A1888 at the Crown Hotel. I'm at the hospital now, can't go. I couldn't listen to her babble. Knowing Wendy was safe at the hotel eased my mind a tad. Yet my eyelid kept twitching nervously. Since Wendy was born, I never left her alone at home. Now, Stella left her all alone in a hotel. I trembled with anger and worried sick if she'd wake from a nightmare. Scared. I couldn't think straight, rushing to the hotel. But the room was empty. No sign of a kid. At the hospital, Stella had just finished getting patched up, lying on the bed. Her right leg in a cast, face covered in cuts, looking quite the mess. Seeing me, her eyes lit up. Tom? I knew you. I grabbed her collar, on the edge of losing it. Stella? Is this a game to you? Where did you hide Wendy? Stella's enthusiasm turned into confusion. Wendy is at the hotel? The room number you gave had no trace of her. No way. Stella's voice trembled with shock. She was napping there when I left. Hold on, I'll call the hotel. Maybe she woke up and wandered off. Realizing something, her face turned ash white, fingers trembling around the phone, dialing endlessly, unable to press even one number. Seeing her like that amplified my growing anxiety, agitating my gut. An unknown dread, a foreboding of loss, strangled my heart horrendously. Before Stella could even call, officers entered the room. Is this the owner of the Mercedes involved in last night's explosion outside Stella? Stella stared at them blankly. The police continued. We found a child's charred remains in the trunk of your car. We need MS. Stella for investigation. Seeing Wendy's body in the morgue rooted my legs like lead, unable to move. Beside me, Stella tumbled off her wheelchair, crawling forward in panic. Wendy? How could this be my Wendy? I stared at the charred remains, unrecognizable. My Wendy, who loved looking pretty, her skin snow white and delicate, now lay charred, no trace of unburned skin. Some parts, only Wendy's bones remained. Just the other day, she sat, painting in her room, beaming up saying it was her picture of our family of 3. In a blink, here she lies, breathless in this cold morgue. No way. I can't bear to recognize her. My heart aches so much it feels like it's being twisted. But the silhouette is so familiar to me. It's my daughter, whom I've raised since childhood. In the end, immense sadness swallows me whole, and I can't bear it anymore. I collapse to my knees. I wail in pain, my eyes bloodshot and filled with despair. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. Stella is still murmuring in pain. I suddenly look at her, and the next moment, I rush at her like a madman. Why didn't you save her? Why didn't you save her? Stella, she was your daughter. She loved you so much. How could you let her be burned alive? She's been burned alive. She was so young, so scared of pain. How could you bear it? How could you? Why didn't you notice she was secretly following you? Why? I pound on her furiously, releasing my anguish. Stella shuts her eyes, tears of pain falling. I didn't know that when I got distracted answering the phone. She hid in the trunk. Tom, I truly didn't know she was there. I thought it was an illusion. She thought it was a hallucination. So at the time, she just protected Oliver and left. Meanwhile, her daughter, inside the trunk, was screaming for her, calling for help. You monster! Why wasn't it you who died? I scream hoarsely, wishing to kill Stella. The day Wendy was buried, the sky was gray and it drizzled lightly. Felt like my soul left with her. Tom, pull yourself together. Wendy wouldn't want to see you like this. My brother heard the bad news and flew back from overseas just for me. During this time, he stayed by my side, helping handle Wendy's funeral matters. I closed my eyes, speaking softly. Do you think I was wrong? If from the start I didn't divorce and just turned a blind eye to Stella, none of this would have happened? I wouldn't have asked Wendy to choose between us. She wouldn't have tried to escape and secretly seek out Stella. How could it be your fault? My brother choked. It was all Stella and that mistress's fault. They're the ones to blame. Just then, a sound came from behind. A woman's voice, raspy and full of sorrow. Wendy? My brother spun around, gritting his teeth. Stella? Do you have any right to come see Wendy? He blocked her, not allowing Stella anywhere near the grave. Disgusting thing, pretending to be so righteous before, what a good woman everyone thought you were. Crossed with the mistress and ended up killing your own daughter. You've got some nerve. Too bad God's blind. Should have taken you too. Not just left you with a useless leg. Stella's leg got infected and wasn't properly treated afterward. But she was indifferent, just kept crying to go see Wendy. Later, her family came back, couldn't stand it anymore, and forced her into surgery. But it was late, the leg couldn't be saved. Heard she'll be in a wheelchair for life. Seeing me turn to look, Stella looked at me painfully, opened her mouth. Tom? I want to see Wendy one more time. Actually, Wendy looked a lot like Stella. They both had beautiful, bright eyes, though Wendy's were rounder and more playful. Their lips too seemed carved from the same mold. I closed my eyes for a moment, then softly said, "Let her look." A month after Wendy's passing, Stella finally agreed to the divorce. She signed away everything of her own accord. On the day we officially divorced, she sat in her wheelchair, face gaunt and full of sorrow. Tom, whether you believe it or not, I never wanted to break up our family. But what happened to Wendy was due to my negligence. I'm sorry for hurting you both. I hope this compensation can lessen your hatred towards me. She wanted to use leaving with nothing to atone, begging for my forgiveness. I stared coldly at her. Stella, unless you die. Her face turned completely pale. Lips moved but nothing came out. She just closed her eyes in pain. Right, how could she die now? The company's in chaos, on the verge of bankruptcy. She's the only heir, shouldering the burden. I ignored her, just turned and left. She had her head down and didn't see me messaging my assistant. No worries left, proceed with the plan. Yep, the company's current situation was orchestrated by me. Stella and Oliver had to pay for what happened to Wendy. Eventually, the company did go bankrupt. Stella fell from grace into the mud, ended up penniless with a crippled leg. Oliver, who claimed to love her, dumped her immediately. He cozied up to a rich lady. Too bad her husband had mob connections. I whispered a hint, and that mob guy caught Oliver in the act. That day Oliver was beaten up badly. In desperation he ran to the window, threatening to jump if they didn't stop. But he got too emotional, lost control, accidentally fell out. He died without even a piece of clothing on. Not long after Oliver's death, news of Stella's death came. Before she died, she called me, pleading for one last meeting. I agreed. When I arrived, her unfocused eyes lit up, reaching out to me. Tom, thank you for still coming to see me. Thank you. I looked at her coldly. I'm here just to watch you die, to witness you breathe your last breath, to atone for Wendy. Tom, I'm sorry. If there's a next life, I'll love you well, be a good wife, a good mother. But in the next life, I don't want to see you again. Stella, you're not worthy to see Wendy again. The light in Stella's eyes gradually faded. Her raised arm fell heavily. She died, tears still clinging to the corners of her eyes. Epilogue. I still don't dare step into Wendy's room. It feels as if, by not opening the door, I can fool myself into believing she's just a heavy sleeper, not yet awake. But one night, I seemed to have a hallucination, hearing Wendy's cries waking from a nightmare. Without thinking, I pushed open her bedroom door. Yet the empty room has no one. Regardless, like possessed, I shout into the air. Wendy, is that you? Wendy, come back and see your dad. Okay? I really miss you. I fell to my knees, muttering to myself in a daze. A gust of wind blew through, lifting Wendy's stuff off the desk. I quickly got up to close the window, worried the wind would mess with her things. After wiping away my tears, I noticed a drawing on the desk. It was a picture Wendy made that day, but someone had drawn a big X over it. The edges of the paper were uneven, revealing another drawing beneath it. I gently lifted it. It was a heartwarming scene of a father and daughter holding hands. There was also a line of not-so-neat handwriting. "Silly Dad, of course I choose you, because Wendy loves Dad the most." I stared at those words, tears falling unexpectedly. Wendy's epilogue. Mom said Dad wants to divorce her, but she has a way to stop him. Wendy, if Mom asks who you choose, you have to say Mom. If you pick Mom, Dad won't leave her and we'll stay together as a family. Got it? Mom was persuading me without telling me Dad wasn't divorcing her. But I already knew. It was like in those fairy tales, with an evil character ruining the prince and princess's love. I knew the person's name was Oliver. I'd seen it on Mom's phone. Just like Mom predicted, Dad asked who I'd choose. I said Mom, and Dad seemed like he was crying. I felt so sad, and I wanted to tell Dad I didn't choose Mom. I only wanted Dad. But then I remembered Mom's words. Only by choosing Mom, our family wouldn't split up. So sorry, Dad. I secretly followed Mom's advice and went to her, feeling like I had the responsibility to save our family. I needed to get Oliver away from Mom. But before that, I was scared Dad would be sad. So I quietly left a drawing. I wanted to show him my true choice. Of course, if I could get rid of Oliver, I'd come back and tell Dad myself. Unfortunately, I never came back. I hid in the dark trunk, but sleep overcame me, and I passed out. Later, I felt a heart-wrenching crash. It hurt so much, but I couldn't wake up, as if stuck in a faint, unable to move. Thick smoke choked me awake. I was terrified, banging on the car, yelling for Mom to save me. Save me. But through the window, I only saw Mom holding another man, walking away without looking back. And then, it felt like I became a ghost. I saw Dad crying and wanted to hug and comfort him, but I just passed through him. Then I realized I had been separated from Dad forever. Dad was so sad, trapped in self-blame, thinking he caused my tragedy. He felt guilty for being so strict, thinking it made me fear him and only love Mom. But it wasn't true. I wanted to tell him I loved him the most. That belief kept me going, and as my spirit nearly vanished, I finally led Dad to my room. He saw the drawing I left him and broke down in tears. I smiled happily. Before leaving, I whispered to his back, "Dad, don't cry. I'll always love you."